Hi, John with eTrailer. Today on our 2014 Volkswagen Jetta, we're going to be taking a look at and installing the Blue Ox base plate. Now keep in mind, if you do decide that you want a flat toe, there are 5 components that you're going to need. You're going to need the base plate, you're going to need the tow bar, you're going to need the tow bar wiring, which will help you with the braking system or the lights on your vehicle. You need a braking system, and you need safety cables. The base plate is an essential component. It will give you the spots for first the tow bar hookup, the safety chains, and your emergency breakaway switch. So once you get to your destination, the base plate can stay on the vehicle. It's an easy system to hook up or to unhook. You can remove your safety cables, the breakaway switch, and then these just pull the pins. And that's out of your way, and the tabs come right out. You're good to go down the road. So one of the things to keep in mind on the Jetta here is how low to the ground it is and where these pins, the pin height versus the height of the hitch on the RV. Now, on this particular vehicle, we're coming in at 13 inches. You want to stay within a 3-inch range, meaning the hitch height here, we would probably, in this instance, need a 6-inch drop on our receiver hitch to keep the plane even. Then when you're ready to hook back up and start towing, it's as easy as just inserting your pins, bringing your tow bar down. If you have a wiring, we'd have a spot right here for wiring. Safety cables. Finally, your emergency breakaway switch. And you're ready to tow. Now, the install on this Jetta wasn't the easiest. It's not impossible, but I definitely struggled with it, and you might too. If you want to see, I've got a few tricks, and if you want to see how I did it, stick around. So the first step in installing the base plate, we're going to have to remove the front fascia, the front bumper cover, let's call it. So very first step, we have 4 T25 Torx bits up here on the front grille that need to come off. And after those come off, there's clips in the bottom. We're going to pull straight out on the grille. Set that off to the side. Next, you're going to grab a T30, and you've got 2 bolts, one here and one over here. Those need to come off right now. Also, we're going to take this center 10mm bolt out. It's not stated in the instructions, but it'll make getting the bumper off easier. Okay, the next step, we're going to be removing, there's 5 T25 Torx screws, and they're mounted on the inside of the wheel well right here. Now it says 5, but on our particular vehicle here today, we actually have some missing, so your vehicle might have all 5, or it might have any. Okay, once we peel back the inner liner on this, we did find one of the Torx bits. It's connecting these 2 pieces. It's pointing straight up. It's this location right here. Now, that's going to be a T25. Okay, the next step after the wheel wells, we're coming underneath, and there's 8 total T25 Torx bits. We got 2 in the middle, and we have 3 on each side. There's 1 here. We were missing 1 here. We'll just move right across. Here's the 2 in the middle. Our next step is actually going to be to peel off the fascia here. It's a good idea. I got some painter's tape, and we run painter's tape along the seam on the bottom and the top. That way, as we peel it back, in case it gets floppy, we're not going to scratch the paint. I'll do this on both sides. Then just go ahead and repeat that on the other side. So the next step, we're actually going to be peeling the fascia cover off. It'd be nice if you had an extra set of hands to help you hold both sides of the bumper. It'll basically just going to peel and pop back, and then you have these center clips here. So as you peel the edge of the fender here, and you just want to set this aside, maybe on a cart or somewhere safe. Our next step is going to be to remove the styrofoam portion of the bumper. It is glued on, and it has multiple points on here that, especially here, there's two catches right here. I just kind of flicked them up with my finger, and just take that off and set that off to the side. Our next step is to remove the temperature sensor. I went ahead, instead of unclipping it, I just pushed on these and pushed back, and that got that out of the way. And then we're going to remove this plastic plate. There's a little button right here, and you just pull down. Set that off to the side. Once the sensor's out of the way, we're going to come over to the side of the bumper. Now this is going to be the same on both sides here. We're going to start T30 socket. You've got a bolt up on top of the bumper and on the bottom. We're going to take those off first, and then we'll be removing the 16mm bolts, 4 of those on both sides. Now for the 16mm bolts, 4 on each side. We'll go ahead and loosen this one, but we'll leave it in to hold the bumper right now. That way it'll support it when we go to the other side. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and remove these 2 10mm nuts in the middle here. It's helpful to have another set of hands here when you do this. We're going to pull the last bolt out. And we'll go ahead and set this off to the side. Our next step is we're going to be removing the windshield washer reservoir. There's 3 total access points that we need to hit. We have 1 10mm bolt over here. We have 2 10mm washers over there. We'll begin by unclipping the connection. So to remove the connector on the motor pump, you can take a flathead screwdriver, and we're going to angle up and unhook it. All right, to make life a little bit easier once we drop this pump, there is 1 more 10mm bolt holding the inlet valve here. Once you have that off, it'll actually twist, and as you can see, it's just a push-in fitting, so I just pushed back on it while twisting, and it came loose. Okay, next we have this line running down that we're going to want to separate. I'm just using a trim tool here, pulling up while prying left and right. Want to be careful not to crack the tank itself too. We're having some trouble getting this out, and rather than risk bending this back and forth and possibly cracking the tank, I'm going to go ahead and snip that piece right there. That's going to allow us to get this out a lot easier. And as you can see, it's still going to hold that clip plenty fine. You don't even, if you want, you can super glue it back, but that's all we needed. Next step, we're going to disconnect this line. Now when we do this, you're going to have washer fluid squirting out, so just be ready for that. Put your finger over it, and we'll bring it down. Okay, one more thing we're going to try to avoid, since this is an older vehicle, and that's okay. This tubing right here is kind of brittle right now, and we don't want to break anything. So these windshield washer motors, they kind of just press fit in. There's a rubber O-ring down here. So we're just going to go ahead and lift up on the entire motor, and then put your thumb over that. Then we can set this off to the side. And then when you set it down, just put it on its side so it doesn't leak, or pour this into another container that you have. Okay, so sometimes plans just don't work, and we ended up, this tube ran from the top down into this, and we couldn't get a hand in there until at the last minute. So we ended up just taking this whole thing off, and that's fine. I still have my thumb where your motor goes. We'll set this off to the side. So our next step, we're going to be accessing these ground points right here. Now, to make our life a little bit easier, we're going to remove the air plenum box on the bottom. This is part of the cold air induction system on this car. It comes down through here and goes up to the air filter, but we don't have to worry about anything up here. To get access, I've got a couple of more T25 screws underneath that we're going to loosen up so we can access. There's 3 13mm bolts that hold this. Once those are loosened, we'll be able to pull this after we loosen this clamp, pull it, and slide it out. Okay. Now, this tab up on top here was actually sitting where the air box goes, and so we loosened just this side of it by lifting up with a little screwdriver or pry bar or whatever. Once that was up, we were able to lift this up and over, and then it came out. All right, with the air box out of the way, now it gives us access to our grounding points. We're going to remove this one first. This is a 10mm socket on there, and we're going to loosen that. And once this is loose, we'll go ahead and get these electrical wires out of the way. Our goal here is to cut this stud off flush with the frame. I have a cutoff wheel. You can also use a Sawzall or anything else to cut it. Our next step is going to be to remove the horn and the bracket. We're going to remove the bracket. It's on the back side here. That'll be a 13mm bolt. Before we do that, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the horn electrical connection. Again, flathead screwdriver at an angle from the bottom. This is the actual action you're doing. You're putting it in, bending back, and that opens the retaining clip. These are a little tricky to figure out when you can't see them. Set this off to the side. Okay, our next step, and we have to do this on both sides, we're going to be cutting this webbing on the frame rail here. Now, the idea behind it is that we need to be even with the frame rail, so we're going to do a cut at the top, and then it's going to go straight down. I know just from past experience that the Sawzall blade, if you're cutting straight down on the backside, you have this weld nut on the back. Your Sawzall blade will actually be on the outside. When it comes straight down, you should end up straight right there. So today I'm going to cut a notch at the top. I'm going to cut another notch. I'm using a Sawzall or a reciprocating saw and a grinding wheel. And we're going to cut a tab in here, take some pliers, and then we're going to cut straight down. That way we have a guide, and we can hopefully keep this as straight as possible. So go ahead and do this to both sides. I like to clean up. Make sure you're flush at the top and down the sides. That's the most important part right now. And clean up any sharp edges. Our next step is going to reinstall the bumper temporarily. What we're going to have to do is where we cut, we'll have to mark on the back side of this, and we'll end up cutting this as well. So we want this secured so we get the right markings. So I'm going to use a paint pen, and I'm just going to trace the back side of this bumper. And we really only have to cut out where the frame ends. Okay, now that we've got the bumper off and marked, we can go ahead and cut this. Again, you can use either a cutoff wheel or a reciprocating saw. So we got the top of the bumper over here. I know we were originally going to notch this out. There's nothing that bolts up to this anymore, so we're just going to go ahead and cut this straight down. That way it'll match the frame. Our next step is to reinstall the bumper once we have the notches cut on either side. So I've got a razor blade cutter here. We're just going to trim the plastic shrouding right here. just below the bumper. I just chose this spot here, and we're going to go straight up. We're going to leave this tab here. The more we can leave, the better, but we don't want it to interfere with our tow system. And we'll do this on both sides. Okay, next we have the base plate clamped up on either side. The idea behind this is we want to get the top of our base plate as high as we can with the frame and level with the frame. So your car may let you do it, it may not, but you want to go as high as you can on both sides, and then we're going to start drilling. With the base plate clamped into position, you'll notice on the passenger side that there is an existing hole in the frame, and we kind of want to just line it up with that. Again, we want to come as high as we can, up and back. With it clamped, we're using a 13/32 drill bit, and we're going to drill out 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 holes. Now this is going to be on both sides. The way our base plate actually attaches to the frame is a bolt, and then they have this weld nut here. And this has to be inserted inside of your bumper on both sides. This hole needs to be enlarged. Actually, both sides need to be enlarged. So even though this isn't pretty, this is big enough for our weld nut to fit inside so we can access the inside of the frame. Okay, I'm going to start with the first hole that I drilled, and I drilled this up in the front so that we can pivot if we need to lift the back up. Won't tighten this down all the way. It'll just give us a secure point to start. I'll probably check the level and then drill our other hole and then remove this. And when we put these in, we want to start from the back and come forward. It'll just make it easier for us. Okay, so far we've got 2 holes drilled out right now, and we got them being supported in place by these weld nuts. You're just going to have to be patient with this. This is one of those pull your hair out things, but it will work. We had to access this one from the front, and this back one back here, we're going to actually have 2. We had to access, there's a hole in the frame under here, and so we had to come up and go back this way. Inside of here is a horizontal piece of metal. So there's kind of like an upstairs and a downstairs. So it's just one of those things, just so you know in advance, you're going to need to take your time and have some patience. So we went ahead and drilled the rest of our holes here. I'm going to remove both of these. When we're putting these bolts in, we want to use red Loctite. They don't get torqued down very much, and this is something that you don't want coming loose with on you on the road. So I'm going to pull these out, apply red Loctite, and start tightening up these fasteners. We're going to do this on both sides. Once you finally get all of these in here, and I'm just letting you know, this is not by any means anything you're going to enjoy. It's not impossible, but you can see by what we had to do, 3 in the front and 2 in the back here, it took a while. But be patient, you can get it. You'll have to bend these certain ways and everything. Anyway, these, once you have the red Loctite applied to all of these, they're going to get torqued to the specifications in your installation manual. So now it's time, we're going to drill into the plate here. This is our air temperature sensor. It's going to end up attaching through the bracket like this. Now we have a 1/2-inch drill bit. I'm going to drill above the existing hole though, because our 1/2-inch bit would actually be too large and it would eat out the bottom here. So I'm going to go up here. We can angle this bracket once we're done if we need to for clearance. You want to be careful about the amount of pressure you're putting on here. You have your air conditioning condenser right behind it, so you definitely don't want to shove the drill bit in too far once it breaks through. So that's going to do it right there. Now you want to make sure and have this bent up a little bit. We don't want it rubbing on the bottom side of this bumper, and also the way we routed our cable over here, we don't want that to interfere with anything else here. So we're going to go ahead and run a couple of zip ties to keep that wire from flopping around. Okay, now it's come to time here. We're going to mount the horn, and we flatten the tabs on it so we're able to reorient it in this position. At the same time, our washer fluid reservoir, now that we have this base plate on with the bolts coming out, we're going to have to put some spacers behind where it bolts up right here. So we'll put one in the front. We'll come back and tighten everything down here, and then what we need to do is kind of see how many washers we need back here so that we have a nice flat fit. So I have 4 washers stacked behind here, and that's enough of a gap across to keep the plastic from contacting the bolts. And don't forget that we have 2 10mm nuts on the backside back here as well. Go ahead and cinch these down. Once the tank is secured, we'll go ahead and we can hook the electrical connections up to the washer motor and the horn. And then we'll go ahead and tighten the horn down. Now that we know we have enough clearance, we'll just kind of center it here and tighten it down. Now it's also a good time to get rid of these weld nut wires on here. I just have a pair of cable cutters. You can use a grinder, cutoff wheel, whatever you need. These are basically just we're gonna cut these almost flush as we can, and then we'll just get tucked inside the bumper here. Okay, and then coming back, remember we had another stud here with these electronics on here. We're just going to reconnect them over here. This is a 10mm, like a cap nut, and we'll loosen this. And then these, we can just find them a new home wherever you have space. And then replace the nut. And just snug it up. If you feel like your wiring is going to get chafed by either the edge or this, we can always come and zip tie it up here if we need to. Just look at your particular situation and proceed accordingly. Next, we need to install the safety cables. These are just in the event that something breaks away and we have something connected to the frame. So I went around the frame on the inside of this. It's running down the inside of the radiator. Now, you just want to make sure this isn't going to rub on anything like AC lines or your radiator hoses and stuff like that. But this base plate has a bracket already built in for us here. So we just ran this around. We'll run that through there and snug that up. And we're going to do this on both sides. So I just wanted to do a little side note here. On the passenger side, when you're routing these cables, it's not just air conditioning lines that you're worried about. You also have your drive belt. You have that serpentine belt back here. And so to take up some of the slack, because these cables are fairly long, I just took and made like a figure 8 and ran a couple of heavy duty zip ties. You want to make sure that it's not going to be rubbing on anything sharp. So this should do us good here. So that's basically it for the base plate installation. Now, if you have a braking system or if you need to run brake wires or anything else, don't put it back together yet. This is a great time to be able to run the wires where you need to. You have easy access on both sides. Once you're done with that, then you can go ahead and put the fascia back on. So when it comes to the front fascia here, our new base plate that we just installed is actually going to interfere with this lower grille. We're going to end up cutting the insert out of this entire thing. We have a jigsaw with a fine tooth blade on it. Okay, so we have our fascia cut out here, and if you've got some help, we'll go ahead and line this up and see how we did. So we're just going to get it close. We're not going to actually snap any clips into place. And let's go ahead and check out with our new base plate install here and make sure we get to everything, the safety chain loops, our power supply, the breakaway switch. There's plenty of room to be able to get in and hook up everything that we need. So with everything fitting good, we're going to go ahead, snap everything back into place and reinstall our front end. And that'll do it for our look at the Blue Ox base plate on our 2014 Volkswagen Jetta.